Reading Until Death Do You Part, Chapter 6, Across the Mojave, 35 minutes. William Hovey Smith, 2021.
This is Hovey Smith, the Backyard Sportsman. And today we're going to have a reading of another chapter of my first novel. Now, I have been historically an outdoor writer. And among my books are things like practical bow fishing, backyard deer hunting, and extreme muzzleloading. And I also have some significant business books, with my most recent being Make Your Own Job Anytime, Anywhere, at Any Age. Now, I wanted to change a pace in life, so I have written a novel. Well, and here's an early iteration of it, just to give you an idea of what a novel in manuscript looks like. And the name of the present version is Until Death Do You Part. An American family meets their Sicilian cousins. And basically what this novel is about, there's been a Sicilian family in Louisiana for 3 generations. And for the first time, they're going to make a trip back to their home island. Included are their 2 brothers, their mother, father, sister, and gay hairdresser uncle. And when they arrive on the island on Monday, they are informed that the 2 fellows will be married on Friday to 2 women they've never even heard of, or none of the family will leave the island alive. And in the meantime, another mob is trying to move in on the island, and they are under constant threat of assassination, and several attempts are made against various family members. As we take up this chapter, they haven't left yet. And in fact, the family is gathering in Louisiana. And as we join Roger, one of the 2 brothers, he is on his way from California, where he was thrown out of the San Francisco apartment he was sharing with his girlfriend Matilda because he never could pay the rent. An all too common failing of artists, by the way, should you be interested in one. But he is starting home in the Busted Beast as we pick up the tale.
6. Across the Mojave. By the time that Roger got underway, it was nearly 10 a.m. He had the Busted Beast's back seat and bed packed with his clothes, frames, and pigments. Among the last things that he put in was an old GI jerry can filled with water. He was going to cross the Mojave Desert, and temperatures of over 110 degrees were forecast. His route would not take him through Death Valley, but he would go from San Francisco to Bakersfield, east to Barstow, and then up to Las Vegas, between 500 and 600 miles. With luck, he could drive the worst of the desert at night and make it to Vegas by mid-morning. The Busted Beast got its name during his college years because whenever his friends wanted him to take them somewhere, he would often reply, "I'm sorry, but it's busted. I need to replace the fill in the blanks. On any given day, it might or might not run." This was the only vehicle he had ever owned. He, his dad, and his brother had been working on it since he was in high school. It was advantageous that 1980 was the last year that International Harvester made the Scout. That year's redesign of the Scout II continued the shift towards appealing more to city dwellers, rather than staying true to the original Scout's purpose as an off-road work vehicle for farmers, ranchers, and outdoorsmen. While in high school, they took the Scout down to Venice for fishing trips, and one year they went to Texas with their dad on a deer hunting trip at the King Ranch. He and his brother Frank shared the vehicle until Frank left for college. Since he had not wrecked it, Roger's dad had thoroughly serviced the vehicle over as a graduation present before he left for California. The transmission, air conditioning unit, gas tank, belts and hoses had been replaced as preventative measures. One lagging problem was the radiator. Although it had been rotted out to remove some of the accumulated crud and corrosion, the Scout still tended to overheat. His version of the Scout had a 345-liter V8 gasoline engine, but not the diesel or turbo diesel that his dad would have preferred. Although the once dark blue paint had now faded, the plaid seats were somewhat worn and the exterior dented from off-road use. His father had made sure that the vehicle was running well before he left Louisiana. Always an engineer, his father was more interested in functionality than appearance. His dad's only concession to cosmetic factors was to have the underside steam cleaned and undercoated to prevent saltwater corrosion should he ever drive it on the beach, which he was forbidden to do. At times, Roger thought that his dad might be more attached to the old Scout than to him. Whatever happened, he had better bring that Scout home in one piece. By driving to Las Vegas, he would avoid the more serious mountains he would have encountered had he headed east towards Reno. The Scouts, as a class of vehicles, were not built for speed, and he had learned that the red 55 on the speedometer was apparently meant to be a reminder that this was the designed sustained operating speed for the vehicle. Even the turbo diesel version, which used a Nissan engine designed for forklifts, was made for durability and reliability, rather than roaring down the highway at 70 miles per hour. Although some Scouts like the Rally E and the Midas models had been fancied up with sharp-looking paint jobs and extra options, none were noted for great speed. As he approached Bakersfield, Roger thought, "That's strange. Every radio station seems to play the same song." Sounds of the long musical introduction to the Eagles Hotel California seemed to sync with the vibrations of the vehicle. On a dark desert highway, cool wind in my hair, warm smell of colitas rising up through the air. Well, I am not going to stop at any hotels in the desert until I get to Vegas, regardless of what they do in the master's chambers, he thought. There are some really strange people out here. Maybe it's the heat and tortured landscape that drives them mad. Still, he had to stop in Barstow for gas, a cold drink, and something to eat. This time a burger, fries, and a milkshake would have to do. He took his time to allow the Scout to cool down. It would not restart unless he allowed it about 30 minutes to recover. While he sat at a table in McDonald's, a giant man with dark shoulder-length hair dressed in filthy coveralls approached his table. This was definitely not one of the pretty boys from the song, but he looked more like a member of a cult who would be only too happy to use their steely knives on a traveling stranger and leave his body in the desert. Grabbing his half-eaten burger, fries, and shake, he went out to the Scout and turned the key. The engine ground. And then finally sputtered, backfired, and started to run. His exit was none too soon because he saw the same man waving at him as he scratched out of the parking lot, leaving a cloud of white limestone dust in the Scout's wake. When he was back on the road, he turned on the radio and the lines, "Heard the bellman say, you can check out any time you like, but you can never leave. Welcome to the Hotel California," filled the cab, followed by the song's long guitar riff. This song had become an earworm, and he kept hearing it repeated in his head. About halfway across the desert, he was in a dead zone and could not pick up anything. He turned the radio off and could still hear, "Welcome to the Hotel California" in his head, as clearly as if he was listening to an 8-track tape recorder. Maybe this means that I am destined to come back someday. Now in the central part of the desert, the landscape had progressed from trees to twisted shrubs to dry grasslands to patches of dry white lake beds that were too hostile for anything to grow, to rocky and sandy patches where a few tufts of dried vegetation stood as twisted tombstones that marked the last rainfall and bloom. He had heard that these blooms were spectacular, but had never seen one. Late in the night, he reached the eastern edge of the desert, and he noticed that the Scout's engine was laboring as it started to slowly climb hill after hill, each progressive ridge and valley providing him with a net elevation gain as he approached Las Vegas. Occasionally there would be a ranch exit road, and once in the moonlight, he could see a perfectly round area of green where a pivot irrigation system watered a patch of ground to raise feed for the rancher's cattle and horses. When climbing up a grade, he heard a loud clank and felt the engine lose power. "That's not good," he thought, as he steered the Scout to the side of the road. He tried to give the engine more gas, but although it revved up, all that happened was an increase in the sound of clattering from the rear half of the vehicle. He was not reassured when his mental playback of Hotel California came to the lines, "You can check out any time you like, but you can never leave." Rummaging in his center console, he found a tiny flashlight and used it to look underneath the Scout. He discovered that the rear drive shaft had sheared off at the universal joint and was dragging on the pavement. Looking at his watch, he could see that it was now 3 a.m. "I don't know if Dad is a prophet, but at least he gave me this AAA card." From his vantage point on the hill, he could see down into the valley and saw a pair of headlights slowly approaching him. Whatever it was big, slow, and miles away. He took out his flip phone and attempted to call the AAA number. Considering his location, he was not surprised that it reported no service. Moving from one side of the road to another or up and down hill did not help. No tower had been installed within reach of his phone. "Maybe I can get a lift from this trucker," he thought, as he watched the vehicle slowly grind its way towards him. He turned off his flashlight to preserve what battery life it had and waited in the Scout with the windows down. The desert was cooling off, which would be good for the vehicle if he could get it going. When the noise and lights got closer, what he saw approaching was a huge Peterbilt wrecker that was pulling a loaded 18-wheeler behind it. On the side of the cab was painted, "Long Haul Truck Recovery, Las Vegas." From its speakers, he could hear the music from some British grunge rock band screaming out over the landscape with a force that almost overpowered the throaty blasts emanating from the wrecker's twin chrome stacks. Roger waved his flashlight up and down. When the trucker pulled alongside, he turned off his music, rolled down the window, and asked, "What's wrong?" "Broken rear drive shaft," Roger replied. "You got 4-wheel drive?" "Yes, I do," Roger replied. "I can't stop on this grade. If the rear axle can rotate freely, wire up the drive shaft to the frame and get to Vegas using your front-wheel drive. Can you do that?" "Yes, I can," Roger replied. "When you get to Vegas, go to Don's 4-wheeler. He specializes in Scouts, Jeeps, and Broncos. He will be able to get you going. Good luck." As the wrecker pulled away with sounds of gears grinding and wheels bucking, Scout's headlights illuminated the large side mirrors on the wrecker. The long-haired driver was none other than the scary-looking guy dressed in coveralls that he had seen at McDonald's. Bending a coat hanger, he brushed the ground back and forth to make sure he was not crawling under the truck with any snakes or scorpions. He prepared his expedient repair. What he was going to use was 2 coat hangers that he had twisted together with pliers and wire the broken drive shaft to the frame and limp into Vegas as the record driver suggested. Even though he did not have much room to work under the vehicle, he got the job done. His clothes were now grimy with sweat, sand, and the ever-present desert dust, which he could feel inside his nostrils. He tried to blow his nose, but everything was caked dry, and nothing came out. With an involuntary shake, he thought, "It is going to feel good to get out of these grimy clothes and take a shower or even a hot bath." More worrisome than the grime was an increasingly aggravating pricking feeling in his back caused by minute cactus spines that had worked their way into his clothes as he lay on the road. When he sat back in his seat, they were pushed further into his skin, so he had to sit uncomfortably erect for the rest of his trip to Vegas. Once back in the cab, he used the second shifting lever to engage four-wheel drive, and then shifted to low gear to pull away. Whatever had happened, the rear wheels still turned, and the Scout pulled onto the highway and continued to climb the hill. He would get to Vegas plodding along at 40 miles per hour. As long as his supply of coat hangers held out, he was in good shape. That hot bath would have to wait. He was relieved to see the "Welcome to Nevada" sign beside the road. Maybe I have left the California jinx behind me, he thought, as he continued his slow creep towards the gambling capital of the world. He was not particularly reassured when he saw signs describing places like Dead Man Gulch and Badwater Bills. He had just left California and still had to travel across Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas before he was home. It was daylight before he crested the hills west of town and looked down on the sprawling city of Las Vegas. Even from his distant vantage point, he could see the Strip with its neon-lit casino signs. Maybe I could win some money, he thought. Instantly, he thought better of the idea. He had better find Don's four-wheeler and get the Scout fixed. That might take all the money he had, and who knows how long that repair might take. He stopped at a gas station, fueled up, and asked about Don's. He was told that the shop was located just 4 blocks off the Strip north of Fremont Street. Inquiring about where he might stay, he was told there were many hotels, casinos, and motels within walking distance. Don's shop was made of concrete blocks with 2 large garage doors that opened up to a grease-stained concrete floor containing hoists, lifts, and pits. It was big enough that 4 vehicles could be worked on at the same time. Over each workstation was a swamp box cooler that kept the immediate work area somewhat cool, despite the usual hot weather. It was forecast to be over 100 degrees today. Roger saw a person talking on the phone in the office part of the shop, wearing a grease-stained baseball cap with Don's four-wheeler embroidered on the front. He motioned Roger over. "I have a Scout 2 with a broken rear drive shaft. Can you fix it?" Roger asked. "Where is it?" the man asked, cupping the phone's mouthpiece in his palm. After replying that it was outside, Don told Roger to bring it in and park it over an empty pit, and he would take a look at it. Don resumed his conversation. He was apparently ordering some front-end parts for a Bronco. "At least I have come to the right place," Roger thought. Like a surgeon giving a diagnosis, Don discussed the problem. "Apparently, the universal joint failed and caused the drive shaft to shear off. You are lucky. I have a junk Scout 2 in my yard and can salvage the parts. It will take a day to fix it and cost $800 to $900 if nothing else is damaged. That is getting close to what the vehicle is worth. Do you want to fix it?" "I'll have to call my dad and arrange for payment." "You can use the shop phone. Once I have an approved credit card number, we will start work on it. Otherwise, you can drive it like it is. Or I will buy it for $500. Roger called home and his dad agreed that Roger could put the charges on his new card. The details of the repairs were discussed with Don and the financial arrangements finalized. At the end of the conversation, Don asked Roger, "How did you hear about my shop?" "A record driver told me about it." "Was it long-haul truck recovery?" "Yes, it was." "It's my brother Frank. He got sent to Nam and I went to Alaska. Something about not having brothers in the same combat unit. He got really messed up over there. He won't talk about it, but he was never the same again. He tried to work with me for a time, but could not be around customers. He started this truck recovery business so he could mostly work by himself and is doing well with it. He has always had a fondness for scouts and has owned several of them. In fact, I am pulling your parts from one of his old scouts." Roger checked into the Plaza Hotel. This was one of the oldest hotels in Vegas, a hangout for some of the mafia families, but it offered good room rates, good food, and was located where the action is downtown. Like everywhere else in town, there were slot machines ready to take your coins everywhere, even in the men's room. Any reasonably agile guy would take a whiz and drop a quarter into a conveniently available slot machine at the same time. His room at the Plaza Hotel was rather ordinary. There was a huge bed, a desk, TV set, closet, and bathroom with a tub and shower. Its style was perhaps best described as hotel functional, with a few nice pieces of furniture in the halls and public rooms, but simple wooden pieces in the rooms. The only unusual thing was that there was a 5-foot-tall mirror on one wall and another over the bed. Anyone on the bed could have a full view of their bedroom activities. He threw his suitcase on the bed and opened it. What he needed more than anything was that bath, some food, and a beer or 3. There was a steakhouse in the hotel, but he thought he could find something more interesting on Fremont Street, where he had spotted a number of formal and informal eateries. After he showered, he tried to scrub across his back with a bath towel, but the cactus spines between his shoulder blades were sticking to him to the extent that he quickly relented. Looking at his t-shirt, he found more spines. Although some were stuck on the shirt, a sufficient number were in his skin to the extent that any pressure on them was painful. He threw the t-shirt into the trash can and the towel on the floor of the bathroom. He did not want to use either of them again. Dressed in cargo shorts, a loose-fitting short-sleeve cotton shirt, and tennis shoes, he ventured down Fremont Street during mid-afternoon. It was too late for lunch and too early for supper, but he was hungry and thirsty anyway. Beer and whiskey ought not to be too difficult to find in Vegas, he thought. Food might be a little more of a problem. The midday inhabitants of Fremont Street consisted of tourists and performers working the street who were there to see and be seen. One group was setting their instruments and amplifiers up on stage for their event that evening. Lining the street on both sides were shops selling everything from fine arts to the gaudiest of Las Vegas trinkets, many of which were very similar to Mardi Gras beads. One Glen Campbell impersonator was belting out Rhinestone Cowboy, while an African drumming group beat out a driving rhythm from somewhere further down the street. The diversity of the noisescape was equaled by the variety of costumes. Having lived in San Francisco, he was not surprised to see guys dressed in black leather and chains, as well as drag queens sporting formal dresses from all periods of history. For now, the most revealing of the costume characters were still mostly clothed, although some had breasts and butt cheeks exposed. The performer showing the most skin was wearing only his jockey shorts, an Indian headdress, and snakeskin cowboy boots. He was belting out country songs and accompanying himself on the guitar, doing a version of It Never Rains in Southern California. He spotted a pair of apparent nuns from the rear and wondered what the Holy Sisters were doing in such a place. When they turned around, he was startled to see that their habits had been cut away, and their breasts were exposed, which sported blue tattoos. They smiled when they saw the surprised expression on Roger's face. He smiled back and proceeded down the street, following the scent of curry emanating from somewhere past the cotton candy vendor. Selecting a bar stool to keep from irritating his back, he looked at the photos of the dishes posted above the bar. He wanted something that he had never had before. "How was your goat curry?" he asked the barman. "It's good. We can make it as hot or mild as you like. I should warn you that it has bones in it because we cook them with the meat to extract all the nutrition from the animal. It is one of our most popular dishes. We can cook it for you now, but it will take about half an hour. We usually don't start cooking until later in the day." "Make mine mild, please. In the meantime, I'll have a course." While nursing his ice-cold beer from a frosted mug, he looked at the bottles behind the bar. These contained a variety of liquors that he recognized, and some, presumably from India or the Far East, that he did not. One bottle stood out. It was bright red with golden tassels hanging from its neck. The first frosted beer was so satisfying that he quickly ordered another. As he was lifting the second frosted mug to his lips, a hand brushed his back, and he recoiled from the surprised touch and the cactus spines prickling his skin. "Hello, handsome." Setting the mug down on a napkin to catch the spilled beer, Roger turned to see a heavily made-up face wearing bright red lipstick, purple eyeliner, and inch-long eyelashes framed by a flamboyant wig of blonde hair. "I'm Dixie Crystal." Taking a closer look, he saw a large-breasted figure wearing jeans and a blouse supported by silver 6-inch heels. On her arms there were rows of jangling bracelets, and around her neck a necklace with rows of square white beads resembling sugar crystals. "I'm Roger," he replied. "Buy a girl a drink?" she asked. "If it is not too expensive. I'm about broke." Roger had been hustled in more than one bar. "I'm just driving through, and my Scout broke down." "Poor thing. I'll just take a little white wine," she replied as she once more ran her hand down his back, and he winced. "What's wrong?" Dixie asked. "I've got cactus spines in my back, and I can't reach them to get them out." "Oh, honey, I know all about that. Once in West Texas, me and a guy thought it would be fun to do it under the stars, and we found out better. We were picking spines out of each other for days. I have just the thing to help." Reaching into a cavernous handbag, she pulled out a pair of eyebrow tweezers and a bottle of nail polish remover. "We will need to move out into the sun so that I can see the little buggers. Besides, they don't like half-naked men running around inside until after dark." "Ahmed, we are moving to a table outside," Dixie shouted to the barman. "That's fine. I'll serve you out there." "The poor thing has got some cactus spines in his back, and I'm going to help him get them out." "You are a good-looking guy. What are you doing running around Vegas without a woman?" "My last one threw me out," Roger said. "I can't imagine why," Dixie said as she ran her hands over his shoulder. "Take off that shirt and sit here with your back towards me." Roger did as he was told. The relatively odd sight of a jean-clad drag queen picking something out of a guy's back and painting it with nail polish remover did not warrant more than a passing glance. There were many stranger sights than that to be seen on Fremont Street. Each time Dixie's finger brushed a spine, Roger could feel it. Dixie pinched up the skin and pulled each of the tiny thorns from his body. All told, there were 10. And when Dixie was finished, Roger felt a hand run along his back without the pricking feeling. "Here's my meal. I'd better eat." "Do you want some?" Roger offered. "No," Dixie said. I've already, and a girl has to watch her figure. Do you want to have some fun? Dixie asked. No, I've been up all night and I need some sleep. I can help with that. I'm sure you can. I want to thank you for helping me out. Believe me, honey, the pleasure was all mine. With that statement, Dixie put a hand on his crotch, bent over, and kissed him on the lips. Look me up the next time you're here and have some cash. It's a shame to let a beautiful guy like you get away. With that, Dixie turned and walked away, leaving Roger with his bowls of steaming curry and rice. He put his shirt back on and turned to enjoy his meal. After pouring the curry over the rice, he started to eat, picking out the bones as he went. The dish was mild, and he enjoyed the mix of exotic flavors. In its own way, it was as flavorful as a Louisiana gumbo, but with a different color, smell, and feel in the mouth. Glad to see you made it, Roger heard a voice behind him. Don told me that you were likely headed down this way. Roger turned to see Frank, the burly record driver who had the look of an NFL linebacker, but was now also dressed in cargo shorts and a t-shirt. Yes, I did. Thanks for your suggestion. Can I buy you a beer? Sure. I'll take a Frosty Miller Lite in a mug, he said as he sat down. What I wanted to tell you in Barstow was that you have a small leak in your radiator. I looked at it at the shop, and there's a rotten spot down near the bottom. How far are you trying to get? Louisiana. That is really pushing it. You still have 1,000 miles to go, and that thing could go at any time. Are you going to go through Van Horn, Texas? Yes, that's on the way. I've run scouts too, and haven't been able to get new radiators for years. There's a guy in Van Horn that will replace your old core. He makes custom radiators for hot rods, racing cars, dune buggies, and such. If you are lucky, Don can call him, and he will have one built by the time you get there. How much is this going to cost? Roger asked. The last one I got was $250. That's reasonable enough. I've been nursing this old one along with stop leak for months. Thanks. Think nothing of it. I'm glad to see those old scouts on the road. What was Dixie doing to you? I've seen her make some strange pickups over the years, but that was a new approach even for her. Oh, nothing sexual. I got some cactus spines in my back when I crawled under the vehicle, and she was picking them out. Have you known her long? She is a regular on this street. His usual daytime job is designing and building custom kitchens. He will remove the old cabinets, replace them with wooden units, and put in a central cooking island, which is the newest trend in kitchen design. You would not recognize him when he is swinging a hammer. When he feels like it, he will put on his drag outfits and work the street. He must be between jobs to be here this time of day. I've seen enough gays in San Francisco to suspect that he was a guy in drag, but that would come as something of a shock to the tourists, Roger shared. I'd like to hang out with you sometime, but I have got to get some sleep. I've been going hard for the past couple of days, and I'm about to nod off in this chair, Frank said. Got a card? I would like to call you when I come back through in a few months. It looks like my family and I are going to make a trip to Sicily, and I should have some interesting things to talk about. They exchanged cards, and Frank left. When Roger got up, he looked up the street and saw his hotel. With warm food and 3 beers in his belly, he knew that a bed was going to feel awfully good, even if he was its only occupant.
And how many voice actors do you suppose were employed to make that rendition? 6? 10? 3? The answer is 1. That is a remarkable effort. And one fellow, Fleet Cooper, who lives in Atlanta and is a professional voice actor, did all of those parts. which is an amazing feat so far as I'm concerned. This book will be published shortly as an audiobook, also as a softcover, and as an e-book. And I'll let you know when it's available. Now, there was a previous chapter recorded that takes place much later in the novel. But now this is Hovey Smith, reminding you to hunt what you eat and eat what you hunt. Be legal, be ethical, be safe. Goodbye, God bless, and see you next time.
Look for the previous video, Reading Until Death Do You Part, Chapter 30, Wedding Day, on this channel. The audiobook version will first be available from Barnes & Noble and then from other audiobook outlets, to be followed by the softcover ebook and Amazon audiobook and other distributors during the summer of 2021. For more information about the book, screenplay, and movie project, go to fatherofthegrooms.com. For details about my more than 20 books and nearly 900 videos, go to www.hoveysmith.com. For details on my business books, go to createyourownjobsecurity.net. See you in the movies. Goodbye and God bless.